talk about it at breakfast. Yeah. Okay, we'll talk about it at breakfast. Okay. Okay, we left off here on the Gemara Lamed Gimel. Ernie. Thank you. So we had the Mishnah says that because Rabbi Gamliel legislated in the Tikkun Olam that the only way you could cancel a get is by informing the agent that he's no longer the agent, or informing the woman before she receives the get that the agent was canceled. Right? That's what the Mishnah. That was takonas. That was the enactment of Rabbi Gamliel. But initially, it was enough to say in the presence of a bezdin, "I'm canceling the agent." Okay. So we'll start over again. Ma'im ne tikkun olam, Rabbi Yochanan ne takonas mamzerim, Reish Loksham ne takonas agunos. One said because it's a question of creating an enactment to avoid illegitimacy, mamzerim. The other is Rabbi Yochanan b'nei takonas mamzerim, Shavuot Reb Nachman. He concurs with Reb Nachman, the Omar b'nei Shnayim, that one only has to make the statement in the presence of two. Ubeitrei les lukola, v'hi lo shama v'lo yoda. So since it doesn't create this public knowledge, obvious public knowledge, she's not aware, she doesn't hear, she doesn't know. V'ozlo mitzvah. She goes and gets married. Dika mamzerim. Rishlok, we did this yesterday. Rishloksham ne takonas agunos. So look, Rav Sheshes. He concurs with Rav Sheshes. Dam ne gimel. So word does get out. Ubei tlosa islu kolo. Anything statement you make in the presence of three, there's a cold. Word goes out. V'sham v'yodav lo mitzvah. Takonas agunos udika. So this is what we were discussing yesterday. So we discussed the Gemara in Bava Basra. Gemara says in Bava Basra, in terms of collecting from lien properties, that if you sell a piece of property with a guarantee that the property should be taken away from the buyer, that the seller is held liable for the cost of the property to reimburse the buyer. If it's sold in the presence of two witnesses and the agreement is in presence of two, that's sufficient for public knowledge. Okay? So the question is, for machor, or for a lender when he lends, unless it's a documented loan, the halacha is, or as many people as you lend in their presence, you can't collect from lien properties. But here we say if the property is sold in the presence of two witnesses with a guarantee, you could collect from lien properties.
Documented?
No, undocumented. Undocumented sale. Right? You sell in the presence of two witnesses, and the witnesses are aware of what the condition was. If the property should be taken, even if the seller sold off properties, you go after those properties and collect those properties. That means undocumented. So the question is, but how does the word get out? So the word differentiates. That when you borrow money, and as Tosa says, the lender, the borrower, always tries to conceal that he's a borrower. He counters what people say, I heard you borrowed money. He says, no, it's not true. So unless it's documented with, there's a document with, it was a scribe and a witness and so on and so forth, as much as he tries to counter that fact, it doesn't help. Word's out there, and therefore anybody who buys the property knows the property is what is liened. So therefore the buyers are protected. But if it's not documented, because the borrower is always denying that he borrowed, word may not get out, and therefore the people who are going to buy the properties are going to be victimized, not realizing that there's a problem with the property.
No matter how many people witness it.
No matter how many people witness it.
100 people.
Doesn't make a difference. Okay? Wait. So we're saying by get, two is not enough. We're saying word doesn't get out. So wait 1 second. So we're saying, but by the property, why? So Gemara says, because there's a concept, lo shadi ini shuzi b'chdi. A person doesn't, when he spends his money, he doesn't waste his money. So before a person purchases a piece of property, he does his due diligence. And because he does due diligence, he will find out two is sufficient to make that the information should be out there in the market, that he'll know that the properties are liened to the what? As a guarantee for the property that's sold. Since it was done in presence of two witnesses are sufficient to get word out into the market. Right? And there's nobody countering that. Nobody's countering that. And a person who spends money, since a person does do his due diligence before he purchases it, he will find out that the properties are liened. Therefore, the buyer of the property, his guarantee holds, and if it should be taken by the creditor of the seller, he can go after that lien property. That's the Gemara Bava Basra. Undocumented. But it was sold in the presence of two witnesses.
So it becomes like a document.
That's like a documented loan.
Because he does it due diligence.
Because documented loan, he says, because the borrower always counters and denies he's a borrower. So that stifles the word and the information in the market. Right? But over here, nobody's denying that it's out there, but it's not as obvious because three, it's out there, loud and clear. But over here, you have to do your due diligence to go after it, to find out the information. When you buy something, you do your due diligence.
It's on the assumption that because two people witnessed it, word would get out.
Correct.
So theoretically, today, with social media being what it is, and I'm not saying this to be funny, but the word could get out. Is that the whole halachic thing, that the word gets out, everybody would know?
Today, everything's public information. Today, it would be a whole different thing. But again, it has to fly evenly by all segments of society, right? Wait. So now we're talking about. We're saying initially it was sufficient to cancel the agency in the presence of two witnesses, two people. That was called Bezdin, according to Rav Nachman. But then it became an issue of Mamzerim. She's not going to be aware, and she's going to get married. But the information's out there. But the answer is because she doesn't suspect that it was canceled. So she's not going to do a due diligence. She's not going to, or the amount of due diligence she does, in her mind, the presumption is he didn't cancel it. If he gave the get, he's probably carrying through with it. Why should he cancel the agency? Therefore, she's going to marry, and if she marries, it's a problem, factually, if he did cancel it. Okay? Therefore, Tosa says that's why you need three. With three, even if she doesn't do a due diligence, word is out there that it was canceled. No, it's not the same.
It's like a purchase. He pays. So I want to say, he said that.
What does he pay?
He pays at least a sheva puta.
It's not. You're not buying a commodity. There's a concept. Lo shadi ini suze prati. Say to man, how did you ever marry this woman? That's called the kasha for Maisa, right?
Let me finish.
I understand.
So he said that a buyer of a piece of property is going to do his homework.
Because a person buys property for value. That's what you don't marry a wife for financial value.
He buys the property because he wants to make sure he's getting it free and clear. That there's no tension of the property.
That he's not going to lose it.
So wouldn't you say the same thing about the husband? Man wants to marry a woman. He's going to want to make sure that she's free and clear.
We're talking about her. It's not him.
No, him. He wants to make sure she's free and clear. He's going to also do his homework. I'm using the same now. If there are two that participated, he will find out because he's going to do his homework.
It's not the same. No. They've said that's right. He has an outlay of money. He's marrying her, right? And he has certain financial obligations to her. He has to clothe her. He has to provide food for her, residence, whatever it may be. It's not the same thing. That's a side issue. Those are consequences. Those are ramifications of marriage. When you buy the property directly, I'm buying property for profit. Why else do you buy property? It's just an exchange of money, right? You have money, now you're converting it into property or into a commodity. So I have to make sure the commodity is a commodity. When you marry a woman, it's not an exchange of this value for that value. It's not. To marry a woman, you have to give a value. There are consequences or ramifications of marriage. It's a whole different thing.
I was just trying to say
I hear, but it's not.
the concept of a woman. I want her to be free and clear. If I buy a property, I want it to be free and clear.
Not the
I will
same.
do whatever I need
The
to
focus
do.
is not the same focus. It's not the same focus.
You didn't say the
Again, there's a presumption. There's a presumption that is not to worry. If he gave a get, wrote the get and everything else, he probably carried through. He didn't cancel the agency. One second. There's a case, which this is what I ended yesterday. We spoke about that if a person has a property with a deed, after 3 years, if the original owner doesn't contest it within 3 years by lodging a public protest, you could remain there, and the original owner has no claim any longer. But if he protests it within 3 years, the occupier has to have proof, a deed, that he purchased it. Okay? So now, you have Yehuda V'Golim. It was like a Cold War. They didn't have any communication from one part of Eretz Yisrael to the other. Person has a piece of property in Yehuda, and somebody occupies it, and he's in Golil. The owner's in Golil, and he lodges his protest. If normally when a person lodges a protest, it gets to the ears of the occupier, understanding he can't be that complacent because somebody's questioning his right to be there. See, he's going to make sure to hold on to that proof, which is the document. Here, word's not getting through. Wait. So, Tosas explains, so what about, but if he doesn't make the protest, he loses it if 3 years pass. So, Tosas asks in Ksubis, if he doesn't make the protest in 3 years, he loses it. He'd say, but there's no communication. But he makes the protest where he is. He can't go, there's no communication. But yet, if he does make the protest, although the occupier doesn't hear the protest, because there's no communication, if he doesn't have proof of purchase or of receivership, he loses it.
After 3 years.
After 3 years. Even though he never heard it. He never heard the man, the word never got to his ears.
Why?
No,
Why is that?
because he has to have proof. Proof that you purchased
Why
it.
if he-
Because because the original owner made the protest.
The guy in the Galil cannot protest in Yehuda, right? He can't get there.
He can't get across the border.
He can't get across the border. So he cannot protest.
So the halachas, if he has to protest. He has to protest.
No one
So
hears
Tosas
him.
asks, wait a second. So what's the value of the protest? Right, but he goes on record, he made a protest. If the occupier doesn't have the document, the deed, when he's approached, why you here, he loses the property. So he says, why? Right? He mistakenly became complacent because he wasn't aware of the protest. So Tosas explains like this. When a person owns a piece of property, even though I can't cross the border, you're always looking out to protect your asset. What's happening with your asset? The man who occupies the property, who believes he has it rightfully, he doesn't look over his shoulder. So if he doesn't hear anybody contesting his right, he becomes complacent. The original owner, he's always looking at what's happening to my property. So, and we say a person will not remain silent if somebody is illegally occupying his property. So we'll say to the man, he'll say, well, if word doesn't get across, it doesn't make a difference. No. A person cannot contain himself. You have to express your pain, and you will make that statement. So the question is, why didn't you make the statement? So saying that because it doesn't cross the border, that's not enough of a reason. How do I know? Because I know. Because the person looks out after his property. Once you know it, then you make your protest. He doesn't know. No, he doesn't even know anybody's protest. Let's say the man's a dishonorable. He doesn't know idea. He doesn't look over his shoulder. So it's the same thing. It's like the woman. The woman doesn't suspect that the husband canceled the agency. So she's going to get married if you only have 2 witnesses. Right? Because it's not public knowledge. The word's not going to get to her ears. Because he has no proof. He has no proof. He doesn't know, but a person naturally becomes complacent. Unless somebody ruffles his feathers, he doesn't become complacent.
How does this work? It's a Cold War scenario. He never heard that there was a protest. But he's still out.
Still out because he has no proof.
Yes, but after 4 or 5 years, he's out.
because the original owner has proof that he was the original owner, and the occupier has no proof that he ever bought it.
But 3 years went by.
Doesn't make a difference, but the original owner did what he was supposed to do. What is he supposed to do? The original owner did what he was supposed to do. He couldn't contain himself. He made a public protest. Word didn't get across the border. That's not his. That's not it. You can't fault him for that. So we say to the man, do you have proof that you purchased the property? He says, no. If that's the case, he's out.
So the 3
Even 6 years later.
How was the 3 years determined?
It was an evaluation. That a man, well, it's a rabbinic. It's rabbinic.
It's a rabbinic enactment.
But once they set those 3 years, a person knows it's like a deadline. Once you set the deadline, the man knows he has to make that protest by that deadline.
So the rabbis basically say that there's an exception to this. If there's a Cold War and there was no way to get the information, we extend it indefinitely.
It's not, but it's not an exception. It's not an exception. It's following the same rationale. The original owner made the protest, and the occupier, that they didn't hear it, you can't fault the original owner. And if he has no proof of purchase or receivership, he's out.
So 6 years later, he's still out.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I'll give you an example. There's another example. What happens if a man sold a piece of property? Well, supposedly, somebody's occupying the property, and he dies 2 years into the occupation, and he leaves over minor children, minors. The minors have don't know anything about the affairs of the father, and the man's there 10 years, and the children never knew they were supposed to protest because they never even knew the property belonged to their father. They're out unless he has proof that he had a right to be there. He's out of the property.
10 years later, those children
Could claim the property if the man has no proof. Because the whole issue is you should have protested. They didn't know. They're minors. It's only if you know and you didn't, that's an indication that you did release it. He doesn't have to prove anything. There's no proof because he has cheskes morikama. The presumption is until proven that it's no longer his.
So possession is 9/10 of the law, does not apply in this case.
You know why it doesn't apply? Because when you occupy property, that's not called possession. When you're in possession of a movable, you're fully in possession of the movable. A fixed property, you're in the property. Right? That's the reason why you can't steal property. Right? Karka in exelis, because you cannot possession. You're occupying the property, but you're not possessing it. Okay.
So why would she have a problem? I mean, the question is strong. It's a strong question. Why would she suspect having these two witnesses come?
What is? No. Again, the agent comes and he gives the get in presence of two witnesses, according to Rabbi Lozer. So what does that do? But if the husband canceled him, he's worthless. The man has no power.
Why would she have a problem to go check that the agent was a good agent? Why would she?
The agent proves he's a good agent. He proves that he's a good agent. He's a viable agent, but he's only a viable agent as long as he's an agent. Let's say the two witnesses come along and they say, we could testify he was appointed as an agent of the husband. So, but factually, if he canceled him, he's no longer the agent. So it's a problem.
There's no reason why she should think that.
Right. There's no reason. That's like the Huden Golim. But if, let's say, he would have canceled the presence of three, she would know soon enough. It's like Robbie said yesterday. She has to wait 3 months before she remarries.
Yeah.
Within 3 months, he canceled presence of three, word's going to reach her that it was canceled. But two, it's not going to reach her. Unless she does her due diligence. She doesn't do due diligence, she's not going to know. Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand. Remember we had the case of the guy put the Tanai on his, if I don't come back in 30 days, and then she's divorced, and he comes back, he's across the river, and he screams, but no one hears him.
No, they hear him. It's irrelevant.
Why is that irrelevant?
Because he didn't cross the river. They could hear him screaming, and she hears.
They didn't hear him scream, but he was there.
Let's say they did hear him
It's not
screaming.
good.
Let's say they heard him screaming.
But
The
he
get is
never
still a
made it-
get.
But he never made, right, it's still valid.
Because he didn't fulfill the condition was, if I'm not back in 30 days, the get takes effect.
So why in the case of the karka, then he couldn't make it?
There's no There's no relevance to this. There is a condition. The get's are the get. It's like selling a piece of property. If you pay me in 30
So
days,
the condition is different than
if you pay me in 30 days, the property is yours. You don't pay in 30 days, not. Somehow you get stuck on the road and you don't pay me in 30 days. Is the transaction? It's not a transaction because you didn't meet the condition. Pay me in 30 days.
The condition is a 3-year.
It's not a condition.
That's not a condition.
It's not a condition.
That's just
It's a fact.
This is the fact. It's very different than that case.
Right. Okay. We do the next Gemara. The next Gemara has to do because David always asks a question. The rabbis could do anything they want. They could actually, unless it's a case of incest, if it's a question of adultery, they could always annul the marriage. Yeah, but Chazal don't do it. So, but Tosas is going to ask a question here, because the Gemara says, according to Rav Shimon Gamliel, if the husband cancels the get is not canceled, and she could remarry. Tosas, the Gemara asks, but she's a married woman. If he canceled the age, she's married. So the Gemara says, Afkinu Ram L'Kedushim Minei. They annul the marriage. Because the man, when he marries, it's based on only if they condone the marriage. The Chachomim, Al Kedas Moshe Yisrael, if they don't condone the marriage is not a marriage. No, the first marriage. So when she marries, it's as if she's getting married as a result of being divorced. Although factually, it's not the divorce, right? Because the divorce is not a divorce because the husband canceled the agency. But they annul it, but it appears as if she's marrying because the first husband divorced her. So Tosas asks, therefore, in every situation of a man, if whenever there's a question of mamzeris, they can annul the first marriage. But Tosas asks better. Tosas says better. We had earlier that a person wants to cover. Let's say he's married to his niece, and his niece commits adultery. So he's going to give her a get without a date, and say she received the get before she committed adultery. Right? We had this earlier. Therefore, you have a date, so therefore he can't do that. Tosas says he could annul the marriage. He'll appoint an agent to deliver the get, and then afterwards he'll cancel the agency. And according to Rav Shimon Gamliel, even though they said you can't, but factually, if he does cancel it, we annul the marriage. So if you annul the marriage, they can't put his niece to death.
That's every case.
That's the Gemara. The Gemara says that. Whenever the husband cancels the agency, unbeknown to the agent or the wife, the get is a get because we annul the original marriage. So if that's the case in every situation, he's able to save the life of his niece. He'll give the get through an agent and cancel the agent not in his presence, where the agent's not aware. That's Tosas' question. So Tosas explains, we'll see it inside, that if in fact the man gives the get and the Chazal make an evaluation, it's not to save his niece's life, then they will know the marriage, and the kids factually on Torah will not be mamzerim. They will not be illegitimate. But if they understand that he did it only to the other way, to preempt the Chachamim that she should not be put to death, we're not going to annul the marriage. We're not going to annul the marriage. Wait. I'll tell you in a second. We're not going to annul the marriage. Why? Because this is a takana. A takana, an enactment, it has to have, it's for the benefit of Jewish society. Within the context, we don't want people to be hurt, unbeknown them to be hurt. Here, he's not doing it so a person shouldn't be hurt. Here, he's doing it to protect his niece. She shouldn't be put to death, which she deserves to be put to death. So we're not going to allow our takana, which has a positive intent, to avoid illegitimacy, right, in Klal Yisrael, so the man should use that as a mechanism to somehow circumvent the system. We're not going to allow that. So they have to make an evaluation. The times we will annul it, the times we won't annul it. That's Tos's answer. We'll see it in a minute.
So how do we get comfortable with it being so subjective in such a foreign area? Meaning, Basin is going to determine what the person's intent is. And that's going to determine...
Yes. They will make that evaluation. Let me go. Whenever, let me ask you a question.
This is something that's not.
Wait. Whenever a person goes before a bezdin, which was a bezdin, they would have a level of interrogation. They wouldn't miss a point. What do you mean? You mean it's subjective? It's subject to the witnesses, what they said, how they said it, and how they presented themselves, and all the other seemingly periphery information. Yeah, that's what it's subject to. That's part of the evaluation of the verdict. That all goes into the basis for the verdict, for the psak din.
Well, it may not be about circumstance, it's about intent. So.
Doesn't make a difference. Same thing. That's taken into account.
All these situations that there's a war with people.
Agud is something else. There, it's not Chazal.
No, so
Here we're talking about Chazal themselves. Okay, I just want to read. So how do they make that? Very simple. If you marry a woman with someone else's ring, is she married? Or the husband has to give the asset, the value has to be his own value, has to be his own. What happens if retroactively they go and they say the money that you gave her was not your money? Is she married? She's not married. Okay, so they're able to say that if you marry her according to meet our standard, then she's married. Then the money you gave her is your money. If not, the money's not your money. It's hefker, doesn't hefker. Wait. That's if he doesn't make it tonight. If he didn't marry, that it's conditional on whether Chazal condone or don't. But if he marries on the condition only if Chazal condone the marriage, they don't condone this marriage. So if that's the case, initially she was never married. It was a conditional marriage. So that the Gemara asked the question. So
how do they undo, if someone's married at a race level, how do they undo it?
You were married at Doraisa, but it was conditional. Well, even if it's conditional, even beer, there's not a problem. Okay, so we'll see. That's what I want you to tell us in Baba Basra. Okay, but right now, according to here, the condition was both on the money and on the beer. Because the Gemara says called Makadish Adaitu Rabbanuk Makadish. Whoever marries, it's contingent whether Chachamim condone it or don't condone it. So even if a person marries it through cohabitation, it was conditional of Chazal. If they condone it, they don't condone it, that means he never meant to marry her. So that means on the Torah level, she doesn't need a get. The first marriage to terminate it, it's null and void. It's annulled, the marriage.
It's a new law firm, null and void.
Okay? Okay, let's see it inside. Tana Rabbanan. Batel mevutel divrei Rebbe. If the husband annuls the agency, nullifies the agent, it's batel. Even after the takana. Right? Rabbi Gamliel says you have to inform the agent or the woman. Let's say he didn't inform him. He did the wrong thing and he canceled the agency. The agency is canceled, and therefore she's not divorced. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer Einu Yochol Lo Levatlo. He's not able to annul it, to cancel it. V'lo hosav al tano, and he cannot change the condition. It was a conditional get. Shem came akor bezdin yofer. Otherwise, what is the validity of the court? The court is made into a mockery. Chazal are made into a mockery. If a man does what he wants, despite what Chazal say, umika meets it. More umika midim deraisa botil gito umshemakor bezdin yofer sharin eshes almo. He said, how's it possible? On a Torah level, the get is nullified because the man canceled the agency. And because we're concerned about the respect of the court that they should have be valued, we're going to allow a married woman to remarry. She's a married woman. Right? That's the Gemara's question. And that the Gemara answers, Ein kol the Makadish Adait Rabbanu Makadish. That when initially the first husband married her, it was contingent on whether the Chazal, they condone or don't marry, their intent. Therefore, in this case, they annulled it. Because of this issue of what? Of mamzerim. Because they didn't want they should be mamzerim or aguna, whatever the reason is. They annulled the marriage.
Rebbe wouldn't hold like this.
Rebbe argues.
Yeah,
Because he's arguing makoch bezdin yofer. It's irrelevant. The bezdin's not concerned about the way they value in the community or not. See, it's interesting. The Gemara says we have in Sanhedrin, there's a thing known as Zilusa de Beidina. The court is disgraced. Let's say you have a court and they give a judgment and the judge makes a mistake. and the mistake was an evaluation. If the judge, something that was explicit in halacha, and the judge forgot, the defendant who paid has to be reimbursed by the judge. Because the fact is, you should have known it. You made a mistake. What about, it was something which, it wasn't that explicit, the halacha. It had to be deduced from somewhere in Shas, which from there, so it wasn't as obvious. You had to be at a certain special level that he doesn't have to reimburse it. Why? Because otherwise the court is going to be disgraced. Because if you can say whenever the judge makes a mistake, so what do people say? See, the court doesn't know what they're doing. The court, you can't trust them because they may say one thing, but you see, they make mistakes. How do we see? Because you see, the judge has to reimburse the person who actually paid. So the Mishnah discusses. If he's a samuch, if he has that special ordination, he never pays. Ever. If he's not a samuch, it depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes not. But over there, the expression is, it's a lucid de beidina. It means it's a zilzul. The court is being disgraced in the eyes of the community. That's the language here. People talking about makor bezdin yofer. If people could turn their backs on an enactment, on a rabbinic enactment, so what's the value of the enactment? There, factually, the judge did fail. The bezdin did fail. So therefore, to protect the bezdin, we don't want that failing should be obvious to the community. That's zilusa de beidina. Here we're talking about initially if people don't abide by enactment, so what's the value of legislating laws? The people don't pay attention to the rabbinic laws. So therefore we have to enforce it. But the Gemara says, how do you enforce it? Factually, you're allowing a married woman to remarry. Right? Because the husband factually canceled the agency. So that the Gemara says, we annul the marriage to maintain, otherwise the words of Chazal fall on deaf ears, they're totally disregarded. And when that we're not going to allow. So that's what Tosas says over here. It depends. They make an evaluation. If the intent was to protect the woman, then we will not cancel the agency. We will not. We will allow it that it's canceled, and she's a married woman, and she's going to have the full consequence of adultery. Right. Okay, good question. Sounds like a above 60th Street question. Okay. The difference is this. When a woman enters into a marriage, Jewish marriage, she understands. It's like when you sell a piece of property. Afterwards, the person says, if I would have known that it would have gone up, tripled in value, I would have never sold it. So remember what you have known. When you sell a property, you release it, ownership, you transfer it, it's gone forever. When you enter into a marriage, a Jewish marriage, the Torah says, to be released from that relationship, it's fully dependent on the husband. It's up to the husband. If he doesn't release you, you're not released. That is the reality of what Jewish marriage is. What happens if the husband does something wrong? He cancels he made an agent, he intended to divorce her, and now he cancels the agency. Which we said he should not. We said he should not. There he violated a rabbinic law, which he said he should not. Being a tough person, being a bad person, although he's he's not violating a rabbinic law. He's not violating. He's not undoing the system.
What about the husband who gets a civil divorce from his wife, remarries another woman, and refuses to give a gift to the first one?
A man can be married to as many women as he wants.
I understand.
On a Torah level. He's a bad guy, but he's not going against rabbinically.
He's basically shown he doesn't want to be married to her because he got the civil
It's
divorce.
irrelevant. Let's say a man is married to a woman, and he moves out of the country and leaves her. He leaves her abandoned. He leaves her as an abandoned woman. He doesn't marry another woman. So what about the woman?
I'm giving the case now where the man has taken an action to divorce his other woman.
Because he could have married. Of course, in this society, you can't marry another woman unless you have a divorce, a civil divorce.
And so he's divorced.
But he's still married to the first woman. He didn't say he doesn't want to be married to the first.
There, I mean, in that particular case, you would think that the Chazal might
Has nothing to do with this. We will continue.